start for you? You know, that passion for sports, and I guess, you know, football, and tying both law and football and sports all together.
Ori, you said something very important, and you are completely right. The football is a part too much important in Brazilian life. You imagine
Yeah.
nowadays we have the elections, and 2 months after the elections we will have the World Cup.
Oh yeah, yeah,
So these two feelings are so mixed
yeah.
and in our minds. In the earlier times, we had always the World Cup in July, something like
Right,
that, June or July, and just after the elections. And this year, specifically this year, we will have the elections first and
right,
after the World Cup. So
right.
there is a mix of emotions.
And
So my name is José Francisco Manssur. I'm a lawyer. I was graduated in and 1998 of the last century. And since the very beginning, since I was interested in developing this issue that we call in Brazil
right,
law and sports,
yeah,
or sports and law.
yeah,
Um, so when I was graduating myself in 1998, it was edicted the first Brazilian general law of sports
wow,
that are into force until now. The lei 96150 from 98.
right, right.
Uh, and so when I saw the law turn into force, I decided myself that I would be a specialized in sports law.
Hmm.
And this law had an article that obliged the clubs that even the very start of them in the beginning of the 20th century was created as associations.
Right.
They would be obliged to be companies in a term of 2 years.
Hmm. Interesting.
So I think with myself, if the clubs will become companies, ball clubs impacted the development of the Brazilian football as an economic sector.
Right.
Besides the very huge importance of the football in social life and the culture of the country.
Hmm.
So there are something like 20 years I'm thinking about why our clubs are still associations if the economic issues are so important and much more important year after year.
Right.
Consider that the associations are a kind of organization that don't have economic proposals. It's how associations is defined in our law.
Hmm.
What I must say to you right now is that this obligation was never put in terms. The clubs was never obliged to be companies in the real life. They
Right.
discussed this obligation in justice, and until now, most part of our clubs are still associations.
Hmm. Interesting.
So I developed a career in sports law. I am a professional since the very beginning. I was involved into the a political of a club in a club association, São Paulo Futebol Club.
Right.
I knew the both sides, the professional sides and the voluntary sides
Yeah.
side of this question.
Yeah.
And in 2015, I decided with a colleague that was very important in this process, Rodrigo Monteiro de Castros,
Mhm.
that would propose a law that was not oblige the clubs to become companies, but it will create a scenario to stimulate this transformation. It
Right.
was the lay of the SAF, the
Hmm.
Brazilian Companies Football Law.
Yeah. Yeah.
In 2019, this law into force after passing by unanimous for the Senate of Brazil and
Right.
the Congress, the National Congress.
Yeah.
And since August 2021, Brazilian has a law, the SAF's law, that is trying to stimulate clubs to adopt by themselves the organization by companies. We
Mm,
have already something about 30 clubs that became SAFs
nice.
and more than 100 that are discussing in their internal internal forums
Right.
the possibility to become SAFs.
Yeah.
So my career is totally structured into around this issue that is regarding why Brazilian clubs are still associations, why could we not propose a new kind of organization, and
Right.
how this organization by associations is becoming a kind of obstacle to develop economically, to develop football as a segment of marketing,
Mhm.
considering that we are 5 times champions of the world.
Right.
We created in Brazil some of the most important players of the history of the game,
Yeah.
and why our clubs receives incomes uh, so smaller that the revenues that the European clubs receives.
Yeah.
Why there is this gap
Hmm.
between our capacity to retain our talents here in Brazil,
Right.
why they go to Europe so early without make a career in our clubs or create a link between the players, the club, among the players, the club, and the fans. And they go early to Europe. Why the level of our games are being worst in comparison with the Premier League, the uh, League One, the Spanish League, or the Calcio.
Yeah.
If we produce good players here, why, if you have a market share of 150 million of fans that declare themselves football fans,
Right.
why can we not transform this in money to our clubs?
Yeah.
In my opinion, the answer for all these questions is it's because we are organized, the clubs are organized as associations.
Right.
So I really believe that changing the structure for companies, we will be able to receive more money, to retain the best players,
Yeah.
to improving better governance models of organization, compliance, governance, uh, ESG, everything we need to develop, to improve our football and put in the level that they could be, but it's still not a reality.
Yeah. No, and it's a big question, that you raises, and of course a very impactful one.